Okay, thank you.
Hello?
We have 2 minutes and then we can start.
Yes. Do you check up for Usman's side?
Yes, he's going to join.
Okay.
Yeah. And Simon, could you also check with opening remarks with the link? I've not seen her.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, thank you. I see Manyau, you're there. Welcome.
I'm here, sir. Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Good to hear from you. Mm-hmm. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webinar. It's a series of Pan-African expert talk, and it's the title is Agribusiness for Accelerated Wealth Creation in Agri-Food Systems. I hope everybody can all see my screen and see me. I don't know whether you're able to show me thumbs up. If you're able to see me and see my screen. Yes, great. Thank you. So we would like to start. It's 11 by the hour, and we'd like to get into the business of the day. Welcome to this Pan-African Expert Talk. My name is Ashford Ngugi. I work for GIZ, Agribusiness Facility for Africa, and I'm seconded to AUD in Midland. We are glad that you're able to join us, and we'd like to go right into the business of the day. We are talking about making agribusiness in the agri-food system sector as a critical lever for accelerated food transformation in the Kampala decade. We have quite a number of speakers who will talk to us in terms of what does this mean for us and how interesting is it for us and who benefits. We also will have a moderator for the session for today. I'm the convener, and I would like to start you with logistics. If you go to there's simultaneous translation for this session, and there's also recording for this session. So when you join in this call, it means you consent to the recording. If you look on the screen, there's the 3 icons, and then you could click on the icons and select which language that you want to listen in. So we are streaming in English, but there's a direct simultaneous translation to French. Yeah, welcome. And what's the agenda of today? Is we want to have 4 distinguished speakers who will talk about the role of the new commitments in the next 10-year strategy, and how do we utilize also the policy direction that has been provided for us with the different stakeholders who worked hard to develop the 10-year strategy and also pass the declaration. What tools and instruments are available for us to make use of the new policy direction and the new policy guideline for Africa. And then the last agenda, but not least, is the roadmap. How do we get from there? What are the new commitments? How has it been? And what lessons can we learn from there in terms of improving so that we are able to optimize in agribusiness and also in employment? And if you have to go there, what are the policy tools and directions that are available to us as a continent? And we'll have a speaker who will give us the roadmap. So without much further ado, I would like to invite the head of Agribusiness project, Agribusiness for Africa, Lynn Fedekota, to give us her opening remarks, and then I'll hand over to the moderator. Lynn, the floor is yours.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And we can see you also.
That's perfect. Thank you very much, Ashford, for the welcome and for the instruction. And give me a second. I still have some technical issue. And give me a second. Okay. So then, good morning or good afternoon or good day. I'm sitting here in Germany. The weather is quite cloudy and windy, so that's why I need to have my headset. But ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to this Pan-African Expert Talk or webinar. And to start, please allow me to provide you with some general information about ABF and our series of Expert Talk. So first of all, to some information on Agribusiness Facility for Africa. We are a regional project and commissioned by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development and by the European Union Directorate General for International Partnerships under the Samoa Agreement of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, the OACPS. So our ABF activities focus on 3 agriculture sectors, such as maize, livestock, and cocoa. And the project aims at enhancing rural development and agricultural productivity. And we focus in this project on 3 activity areas. So we have 1, the skills for agribusiness. The second one is the collaboration with the private sector to increase the private investment in the selected value chains across the OACP member states. And the third activity area is about innovation and market linkages through the South-South exchange. So here in this context, GIZ is providing to some selected partners in ACP countries, support to address global development or changes or challenges even. And under this output 3, we are also organizing this series of expert talks on various topics. So on Africa, like today, on agribusiness policy to share the information on the implementation of the new Kampala Declaration from 2025, or on international voluntary carbon markets and standards for all selected value chain actors, or even on EU regulation to share updates on supply chain laws. So today's session, as I said, is part of our expert talk series. And I would like to thank our 4 key speakers for taking the time to join us to explore more some important question that you will be introduced to this question, but let me tell some of these key questions I found also quite interesting. And so what is the role of the new commitment in agribusiness and who will benefit it? then who can or how can we utilize the landscape of policy direction of Kampala Decade and contribute to increase optimization and employment in agribusiness? Or how will the policy tools and instruments available play a role in shaping current and future trade relation to agribusiness in Africa? So Ms. Providence Movumbi, the director and the country and agriculture division from COMESA, thank you for being here. Usam Jibu, our cluster coordinator in agriculture from GIZ Burkina Faso, and also Mr. Komla Prosper Bissi from the African Continental Free Trade Area. And last but not least, Dr. Manyevu Matumba, I hope I have pronounced all your names correctly, from Oudanepat. So thank you very much for joining us. And in order to stay on time, I would like to hand over to our moderators, Mr. Sholar from Oudanepat and also Ashford, to start today's expert talk. And I hope you all enjoy a stimulating and productive talk. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Lynn. Thanks for those warm welcome remarks. And before I hand over to Chola, I wanted to ask one of the presenters, which we have changed. It's Professor Siba Sibanda. Chola will introduce him from FunPan. Now the stage is set, and I think I would like to hand over to the moderator, who is our driver for the day, to take us through the business of the day. Chola, are you there?
Yes, I am here, and good morning, good afternoon, and good day to everyone, depending on where you are. I think just to stand on existing protocols that have been established regarding the recognition that we've given to the presenters. And also thank you, Ashford, for convening this. So just to sort of set the stage in a way, I want to just mention a couple of things. As early as 2013, the World Bank had, through foresight analysis, already said that the agribusiness and the food industry in Africa will be $1 trillion business by 2030. $1 trillion by 2030. So the opportunity is there, and we have been growing towards that $1 trillion. Because by 2019, you'll find that agri-food systems and agribusiness and the food industry was contributing about 15% of the African GDP. At this time, this was the third biggest sector. The first was the service industry, issues such as telecommunications and so on. Those were at 62%. The industry, including oil and mining, was around 24%. Agriculture was about 15%. By 2030, the service industry will still be the biggest, but agriculture would have surpassed some of the extractive industries, and this will be the second biggest sector on the African continent in terms of contributions to GDP. So it will be about 35%. And that's when we sort of hit that $1 trillion mark. Now, even if you consider the size of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which at the time of its launch was about $3.4 trillion in terms of GDP, it simply means that by 2030, the agribusiness and food industry will be contributing 30 to 35% of the GDP of the African Continental Free Trade Area. So this is a very important sector, and clearly we have to really move it because the opportunity is there in terms of the market size and its contributions. But why this webinar becomes important is then this is just an opportunity. This is just potential. So what are we going to do about it through the various instruments, various strategies, various planning to make sure that when we get to 2030, this $1 trillion opportunity will be realized. And so that is one of the things that we need to be discussing even as we move forward. So this webinar, themed Agribusiness for Accelerated Wealth Creation in Agri-Food Systems, is within that $1 trillion space. And to achieve this, what we want to discuss today is the role of agribusiness investment as a critical lever for accelerated food systems transformation and its requirements. And this is very important, the requirements in African Food Strategy and its action plan in the CAADP Kampala decade. And we'll get to a point where the four speakers, will tackle these particular questions. And I think Lynn has already touched on them. So the first one really looks at the new commitments in terms of agribusiness and who will benefit. And this, the speaker shall take a deep dive into this. The second one is on the landscape and the policy direction. This is very important for attracting investments. Second speaker shall touch on this. What kind of tools and instruments and policy are available for us to get to this $1 trillion mark by 2030? And lastly, we're going to look at the roadmap on that. And we have some very distinguished speakers who have plenty of experience in this particular sector. We'll begin with Madam Providence Mavumbi, who is the Director of Industry and Agriculture Division at the Common Market for East and Southern Africa, COMESA. She has over 20 years of practical experience. She's been working around the regional economic communities for many years. And she's also had a lot of engagements, both within the public sector as well as the private sector. And the last time we met, she was also talking about a program such as Grow Africa and how she was also part of that many years ago. So she's clearly able and capable of delivering this particular subject and giving us some insight into that. So, Madam Providence, the question is the first one. To elaborate on the role of the new commitments in agribusiness and who will benefit, based on your experience, what are the challenges that will be faced in terms of implementing such policies? And I'll hand over that question to you. And I would also like to put a caveat, even as you answer that because we've been in this space for a long time, maybe it's time to depart from the usual answers. Maybe it's time for us to be a little bit out of the box in terms of how we answer this, so that then we get new thinking around some of these problems. So that is your question, madam, and I'll hand it over to you. Thank you very much. You have 10 minutes, and then I will maybe switch off my camera, and at the 8-minute mark, I will pop up again just to tell you that you have 2 minutes left, and then I will turn it off again. And then when I come back, then it will time for a hard stop. So over to you, madam, and your 10 minutes starts now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chora, for the introduction, and good morning, everyone who's following this webinar. First of all, I want to thank the organizer for this event for convening this dialogue in a timely and important time as we look at making agribusiness a critical lever for food system transformation in Africa. So to start with, what are the new commitments? As you can see the slides that are being displayed, the Kampala Declaration on Agribusiness Development outlined bold and ambitious goal to reposition agribusiness at the heart of Africa food system agenda. As already the moderator mentioned, this sector have a potential of $1 trillion to be worth of $1 trillion in 2023. So the new commitment is about intensifying or strengthening agro-industrial value chain, attracting private sector investment, scaling research and innovation, enhancing inclusivity, improving access to finance, infrastructure, and regional market, among others. And there's also a very important commitment on strengthening agri-food system governance. Going forward. Next slide, please. So you can ask yourself, what are we going to get as a benefit from implementing this new CAADP? Beyond individual beneficiary that I will talk about, this commitment carry a profound benefit for the continent. One, when we look at our economy, we are looking at accelerated economic growth, especially in the rural area, where we are looking at increasing 45% in agri-food system. We are looking at tripling the intra-Africa trade, especially in agri-food products and the input. We are looking at raising the share of locally produced food to 35%. The second benefit is about food and nutrition. We are committed to ensure that by 2035, there will be zero hunger on this continent by reducing stunting, wasting, and overweight by 25%. We are looking at ensuring that the population of the continent, at least 60%, can afford a healthy diet. We are looking at inclusive growth, which include 30% of women, youth, and marginalized group in agri-food value chain, be able to benefit from this new agribusiness investment that we're looking forward to have as we implement the new CAADP declaration. We are looking at having climate resilience and sustainability by adoption of sustainable agriculture practice. We are looking at agro-industrialization, which will enhance local value addition as we create jobs. We are looking at increased investment in the sector, especially financial inclusion through adoption of digital solutions, having products that are tailored to the need of our farmer, youth, and trader in the agribusiness. Next slide. At individual level, of course, the first beneficiary of this new CAADP declaration is our small farmer holder, who account for 70% of Africa food, the produce of Africa food, to gain access to better market, finance, agriculture extension services, investment in rural infrastructure such as feeder roads and storage facility, which can help them reduce their post-harvest from 30, which is between 30 to 50%. We are looking at the second category is our youth and women, who are mostly involved in cross-border trade, in value addition, the little value addition done in this sector done by our youth, who will benefit if we implement this CAADP through targeted training, inclusive financial instruments, and tailored policy that encourage their participation in the agribusiness sector, as well as having a viable livelihood. Third is our agri-SMEs, who are involved in value addition. You have seen on the continent many small medium enterprises involved in producing value-added products such as ketchup, juices, and many more. So we hope through this CAADP, they will be able to benefit to get affordable credit, better infrastructure, and capacity building support, especially on research and technology, access the required technology. Fourth is our research and innovation institution, who also benefit from increased collaboration and funding to generate climate smart, locally adapted technology. The fifth one are our policymakers and the government, who will benefit from harmonized evidence-based policy that promote regional competitiveness and sustainability. This includes the alignment of agribusiness development with the ACFTA and other regional strategy or continental strategy. Last but not least is the consumer, ourselves. We'll be able to benefit from this by having affordable, safe, and available food. Strengthening the agribusiness system not only will it improve on nutrition security, but also will benefit us in economic resilience. So coming to the challenge that may affect the Kampala Declaration, despite that it has a promising direction, among them, which we know very well from the onset, is limited access to finance, especially for smallholder farmer and our SME who struggle often to get credit, primarily due to high risk perception and lack of collateral. If we can partner together with the financial institution to come up with tailored credit product for them to access input, to access equipment, especially machinery needed in the farming, it will be able to address this challenge. I'll be giving a challenge and potential solution. Second challenge is our weak infrastructure. We still recognize that the continent, mostly the market access road, what we call feeder road, from farm to market, they are in poor condition. We have inadequate storage. We have an unreliable energy supply, which continue to hinder production, especially in processing and trade. The third challenge we are likely to face, but we can work together to address, is policy and regulatory gaps, which come from fragmented and inconsistency policy, especially around trade, land, and finance. Going quite ahead, we have risk on the environment, which I cannot emphasize because we experience unpredictable weather pattern, pests, and disease. We have limited research and innovation where we really call for our institution, especially the academia, to come in place to support research and innovation to be able to give us products we need or solution we need to adapt for smallholders or agro-processors. Issue on land tenure. We need really reform on land tenure in our countries to ensure that land rights and discourage those investments that go to land and the land is not being used while the majority of the population have no access to land. We need to include issue to do with youth and the gender inclusion barrier. In some of our policy, as much there is a political will, the policy don't translate into that. So we are calling to remove such structural barrier to cultural, education, and financial, which continue to hinder youth and women to access the needed resources for productivity. Last but not least, it is still limited public-private partnership. We really need to come up with strategic PPP framework to encourage investor in this sector. I thank you, and if time allow, I'll come back to provide more insight or to respond to questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director. Your timekeeping is impeccable. 10 minutes on the dot and you're done. So thank you very much for that. A number of issues that have been raised, such as limited access to finance. I think it's a topic that we need to come back to simply because we've been hearing it for the last, 20, 30 years, and it's still an issue going forward. So why have we not done anything about it if we know that it's quite pertinent? The second issue that I would like to also pick up on is the whole issue of the weak infrastructure. Some of the analysis that we have done here is that when you look at just the first mile, which is also becomes the last mile, the first mile in terms of marketing, but it's the last mile in terms of input getting, you will really find that that's where the biggest cost is in terms of the transportation and logistics. So thanks very much for that. We'll jump straight to the second panelists, Mr. Usman Jibo. So thanks very much, sir, for that. You are the cluster coordinator at GIZ, and you're based in Burkina Faso. You occupy a unique role simply because you've been part of the NEPAD story and the CAADP story for a while, and also now you're also with the development partners. So we thank you that you sort of bring both perspectives to this discussion. So we know that you've been in this space for over 20 years plus, and you've worked quite clearly in this. So we'll jump straight into it. And because you've been part of this whole this discussion, I guess, as far as Maputo, all the way to Malabo, and now you're in the CAADP Kampala era. So clearly, how in terms of how do we interrogate this landscape in terms of the policy direction and its contributions towards the growth of the private sector and agro-industrialization? This is an area which is very important. Attracting private sector investments, ensuring agro-industrialization, and what kind of policies do we need for us to achieve that? So over to you, sir. Please give us your insights and perspectives on this particular topic.
Thank you very much, Shula, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for having me. Let's have a look back. When you go to look at Maputo, if we try to contextualize, the Maputo Declaration 2003 was made when the overseas development head was going down. So in terms of main goal of Maputo, it was in the focus, the increase of agricultural investment. If you go to Malabo 2014, then the focus, the main goal is to achieve results and transform value chain. So looking at the growth impact areas, we can clearly say that Maputo really laid groundwork for growth because it helped to put more attention into agricultural investment. And I still remember what Richard Nkandawire, the former head of CAADP, used to say. Maputo was really a social movement to raise awareness about the importance of our agricultural sector. So in terms of Malabo Declaration, the growth impact areas was focusing more on productivity and trade aspect. So in Maputo, the industrialization focus was very minimal. But compared to Malabo, you can see a stronger push for agribusiness and agro-technique. In terms of accountability, if you compare Maputo to Malabo, we can clearly see that the accountability aspect was very weak, even not existent at all in Maputo. But then in Malabo, we put in place, the African Union and NEPAD agency put in place the biannual review process, which was introduced. So going further, looking at the growth in private sector investment and agro-industrialization, I will say that Maputo Declaration, the clear objective was to commit African Union member states to allocate at least 10% of national budget to agriculture and achieve 6% growth in agriculture. So in terms of experience and achievement, so as I was saying earlier, Maputo helped to increase policy attention to agriculture across Africa. In some countries like Ethiopia, Malawi, Rwanda, even Burkina Faso and Mali at that time met or came close to the 10% budget allocation to agriculture. And so it helped to lay the foundation for agribusiness, infrastructure, and rural development program. But there were also some limitations. And among of them, we can mention few countries consistently met the 10% investment target. I think if you count them, there were even less than 10 countries who met this 10% budget target. And also there was a weak tracking and accountability mechanism and a limited focus on agribusiness or agro-industrialization. Focus remained on production level agriculture. So this was clearly the focus in Maputo. So going back to Malabo 10 years later, so the objective was clearly on building on Maputo, but shifting from just spending to result-based agricultural transformation with clear goals and clear indicators, target indicators. So one of them, and as my previous speaker said, it was doubling productivity, tripling intra-African trade in agricultural goods, halving post-harvest losses, and also promoting inclusive agribusiness and value chain. So in terms of experiences and achievement, so it's helped introduce the biannual review mechanism to track performance with data. And also it helped to push the agenda toward agribusiness, agro-processing, and private sector investment. In some countries, improved productivity and investment in value chain promotion. Countries like Ghana, Senegal, and Rwanda. But there were also some limitations. And among them, we can mention the slow progress in industrialization due to infrastructure and also finance and policy bottlenecks. And many countries still struggle to scale agribusiness from smallholder level to industrial scale. And also there was some inconsistent data reporting and limited accountability on the result. So moving to the next aspect, looking at the lessons learned from Maputo and from Malabo and going forward Kampala, we will say that the key lessons learned are the following. The policy consistency and implementation matter. This is the first lessons learned. We need strong policy without implementation is maybe other way around. Strong policy without implementation lead to limited impact. In terms of application, Kampala decade must ensure policy coherence and reduce bureaucracy and timely execution of investment incentive. This is very critical. In terms of second lessons learned, in terms of public investment, which can crowd in private investment. So the main lessons here is country that invested in infrastructure. It can be rural road, it can be energy, it can be irrigation system. So higher private sector participation. So in terms of application, government must lead with catalytic public investment to attract private capital into agro-processing and agri-technique. So the third area in terms of enabling business environment, so which is very crucial. So the key lessons are regulatory hurdles and land tenure issues deterred investors. In terms of application, Kampala agenda must support land reform, tax incentive, and ease doing business for agribusiness. And in terms of the fourth key lessons learned, agro-industrial parks and cluster work were well managed. Key lessons learned in this area, and as we saw in Ethiopia and Morocco, they succeeded by developing agro-industrial parks tied to raw material zones. So in terms of application, we need to promote agro-industrial apps with reliable logistic, power, and financing structures. So I think these are some of the key lessons learned. If I have to go further, I will say that blended finance unlock capital. As my previous speaker said, finance is critical. Therefore, key lessons learned from the past are that risk sharing, and blended finances make investment feasible for small and medium enterprises and youth. In terms of application, we need to expand the risking instrument and public-private financing platform to support scale-up. And the sixth one, linking small orders to value chain. The key lessons learned here is ignoring small orders integration cause weak supply chains. And in terms of application here, we need to support contract farming, farmers cooperative, and digital platform that link small producers to processors and market. And finally, in terms of data monitoring and accountability, I think the key lessons learned is that Malabos biannual review help, but lack enforcement power. And for that, we need for Kampala decade to strengthen real-time reporting, performances, and scorecard and peer review mechanism. So I think I will hand up there. Shola, I saw you already on the screen. It means my last 2 minutes as a hand up. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You were, in terms of timekeeping, you're not as good as Director Providence, but 1 minute over is still acceptable. Thanks very much for that. I think one of the key things you've also mentioned here is the whole issue of implementation capacities, which is also mentioned within the CAADP Kampala, CAADP Kampala. And then because we are now moving, I think, from agriculture to agri-food systems, the whole issue of coordination, coherence, even issues around policy have become so important simply because food systems encompasses more than just agriculture. So that is a very key component in terms of how we move forward. I also like the fact that you also mentioned that Malabo did lay the ground to bring on board private sector investments, maybe not to the extent that we would have liked, but I think the foundation was laid and we can build on that. I think programs, whether it's Grow Africa, the New Alliance, National Culture Investment Plans, there was quite a lot of recognition around private sector investments and involvement within this. So before I go to Professor Sibanda, I see that Ashford, your hand is up. I gather you have something important to say.
Yes, thank you, moderator. A quick one is we would like to ask people to post comments or questions on the chat. I think we'll see how to also, if you are not able to, but we are going to open it so that people can already start commenting. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you too.
Thanks very much. So we'll go straight to our third speaker, and that's Professor Sibanda. Professor Sibanda has been in this space for over 40 years. He has a wealth of international experience looking at policy. He's also an academician. He's worked in management consultancy. So really, I mean, he's been part of this process for a very long time, and his insights in this are quite clear. At the moment, he's a theme leader in terms of nutrition sensitive agriculture and food systems program at FANAPAN, which is a food, agriculture, natural resource policy analysis network, and is based in Pretoria, South Africa. Professor, welcome, and thank you for accepting our invitation, even if it was at a short notice, but I gather it relates to the importance of the discussion, and that's why we are here. So we would like to really tap into your wealth of knowledge here. And so just to answer the questions, please, could you share some of these policy tools and instruments available that could help to shape the agribusiness landscape in Africa under the CAADP Kampala process? You have 10 minutes and I'll pop up after 8 minutes just to remind you that you have 2 minutes left. So over to you, Professor, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you to the conveners of this and for extending the invitation for me to participate. Before we go too far, I think the whole issue of, excuse me, attracting, private investment, because we're talking agribusiness, which is the business of the private sector really, by and large. And we want to see how policies can make a difference to this. Now, the first position is that policies are basically frameworks for directing public investment, because everybody we hear in many fora that everyone says Africa has good policies and, that sort of thing. We don't need more policies. But in a lot of cases, our policies really are not supported by, budgets, if we're talking about, because we're talking policies and public investment, those two go together. And without investment, that policy document is really just a wish list. And a lot of our policy documents are like that, especially when we go to the national level, because to get implementation is because our countries have not put budgets into place. And also the budgeting process has not gone through parliament. So there's no legislation to actually cause enforcement at national level. So that's one of the provisos that we want to make sure as we move into Kampala, we really work with countries to try and institute this. Just as an example, if you take the European Rural Development Program, that is a legal instrument with instruments of enforcement. So that's one thing. And the other point also is that we also need to ensure that there's a business case for private sector to engage, especially in African food systems, which are largely driven, at least at the primary production side, by smallholders. And so we need to see that there's a business case. If you look at the Kampala, declaration and the strategy document, is still very much developmental, and a lot of private sector players will find it difficult to see their entry point. So what do we need to do here? It may be that we may need to repackage the CAADP national, food systems investment plans into, chunks that the private sector can actually find an entry point. It could be that we need to look at a sector or even subsector or even commodity type of programs as an extension of that CAADP to make it operational. So obviously, successful agribusiness growth and agro-industrialization will need the integration of, a lot of policy instruments, policy tools to make it coherent and to execute these strategies. I think a lot of these instruments in broad terms, my colleagues have already covered the issue of investment incentives, infrastructure, market access, particularly for smallholder producers, the issue of technology innovation, and also the issue of finance. I think we keep hearing this inclusive finance, particularly for the, for the smallholder sector, SMEs. So if we can move on. So we're looking here at examples of, several policy instruments that could be used during the Kampala decade. And so there's a number of these instruments. On the left there, you see the tools. Then we've got the purpose. What is it that we want to achieve with the tool? And what impact will these tools make on agribusiness? Starting with risk sharing, such as use of credit guarantees. Basically, it's to reduce the risk for the private sector investors so that they can come in and increase investment in high-risk areas, particularly smallholder agriculture. There's a perception this is a very risky area. A lot of it is probably driven by lack of knowledge on the system. So government can definitely do something about that. So this is a catalytic investment that the public sector can put in place. Social investment, what I would call social engineering. If we want, for example, the market linkages with smallholders, you need to organize smallholders into either cooperatives or some farmer groups or so that you reduce transaction costs of doing business with this group of stakeholders. So only government, I think, is better placed to make those kind of investments. The private sector will find it difficult to put money up front to, for example, create a farmer group or cooperative where they would probably not see an immediate, improvement in their bottom line. The African Continental Free Trade Area implementation, this is a key area which, member states should really focus on, reducing tariffs, harmonize trade standards, so that we boost our intra-Africa trade and also improve market access. And again, export credit, insurance schemes, that will also facilitate financing for exporters, again, reducing risk. And then investment promotion policies similarly to attract private and foreign investment, which would increase capital influx and also foster agribusiness growth. If we can move to the next one. So again, this is just continuing with the tools, the use of agro-industrial parks. We already had examples here from countries like Rwanda, for example, where you establish hubs for value-added agriculture and targeting specific sectors that to be promising, creating processing capacity as well as jobs. And the issue of SPS standards, obviously, that this is a non-tariff barrier for a lot of trade, so necessary to align sanitary and phytosanitary standards, also to improve access to regional and international markets. We also have the issue of targeted incentives, something which only the public sector can do. Issues of subsidies, we're talking of smart subsidies, not just blanket subsidies like we have seen in a lot of input support schemes in most of our member states. Governments can also use fiscal instruments, providing tax breaks to specific investment areas, which would reduce the costs for investors and exporters, and basically improve the competitiveness of investments in African exports. So again, targeted investment into infrastructure, knowing that you are focusing on a particular corridor, the specific, areas that are promising, so you can target that investment to put in roads, electricity, internet connectivity. We're talking of the digital divide, where a lot of stakeholders on the production side do not have access to digital, tools because they don't have connectivity. So this would attract investment into rural areas and also manage the digital divide. So which obviously we want to stimulate rural industrialization and access to digital, solutions for particularly for youth, because everybody talks about the youth dividend, but if we don't provide the opportunities for the youth, then we are sitting on a time bomb there. So if we can move on. Yes, I think I'm done, Chola. So if those were basically just a compendium of instruments and some examples that we can use for the private sector to provide that catalytic investment to drive private sector to come into the sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor, for that wonderful overview. I think some of the take homes here really is that policy that is not supported by budgets is a wish list. And I like the way you've hit the nail on the head, because I think these are some of the things we need to hear. Do we need more policies? I think you also touched on that. And I think the question was, the answer was almost no. I think what we need is to make sure that we have policies that can then become legislative and therefore become enforceable along the way. I think you also mentioned something critical here, and that based on your analysis and understanding is that the Kampala CAADP document is still very much a development case-based kind of document. And one of the things that we're also trying to do within our unit here, I'll tell you, DNAPAD, is to really say, okay, fine, there is the development case, which is ideally public sector driven. But then there's a business case, and that's a private sector sort of driven. And where do these two things intersect? So then there's a sweet spot which talks to both cases. And I think within that mix, there's also the political case, which we can't also run away from. So I think the emphasis on public investment is quite critical. And I want to say that when we talk about public investment here, then I think there needs to be a shift in terms of how we are thinking. So if it's really an investment, whether it comes from the public sector, then clearly there must be some kind of return that can be attributed to that investment, whether it's a social, economic, or monetary kind of return. But ideally, that should be there, so then we can help develop these kind of business cases. And thanks very much also touching on the issue of subsidies, where they are smart or can be, I think that would be very important in terms of how we use them. And then these same subsidies can also be used, I think, even within the finance space in terms of creating competitive interest rates, because we've been applying these universal subsidies, which in some cases have just become social investments without very little economic return. So thanks again for touching on that. Our last speaker, last but not the least, is Dr. Manyeo Mutamba. He works with us here at AUD and NEPAD and is the Senior Programs Officer on food security. Internally, he's also been leading the CAADP processes. I think starting from last year, he was really at the forefront of it in terms of also working with the technical working groups, setting those things up. He's also spearheading the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health programs. He's part of the food systems initiatives. He has a long list of accolades. So clearly he's very well placed for us to sort of dive into this, which is the last question that we are going to deal with. So Dr. Mutamba, you are at the forefront of this, really. If I can, I would not like to use the word spearheading, but you are clearly there at the sharp point of the stick. How would you share in terms of the roadmap, and how is it sort of shaping up, also particularly for future leadership roles in this implementation of the CAADP Kampala strategy? Where are we going? Are we going around in circles, or clearly we are taking steps in the right direction? Are we moving at the right speed? Is 2036 feasible in terms of what we want to achieve in this space? So I'll just throw a bunch of questions at you, simply because I know that you're at the forefront of this. So clearly, where are we going with this, and how is the roadmap looking like? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for the generous introduction and already for the pointed questions that you're asking with respect to the direction that we are taking already. You have been a part of, the thinking as well, the thinking process around how we move forward beyond the CAADP Kampala. As you know, we have already started the process of mapping how we are going to move forward, and some of the critical elements that we need to already get going for us to really support the domestication of CAADP Kampala. I'm glad to see that there's already a lot of thinking and a lot of understanding in terms of how we move forward with respect to some of the thematic issues. And I'm just really going to summarize today in terms of the broader coordination role that we are doing as AUDA NEPAD, without really going into the thematics, because that's already work that is upcoming in terms of our planning, in terms of our detailed support to each of the thematic areas. Essentially the 6 strategic objective areas, we will have dedicated support to stakeholders, to member states in each of the 6 strategic objective areas. But today I'm really going to summarize the thinking, or at least the planning, with respect to how do we move from the CAADP Kampala as a document, as a continental framework, to actually driving its domestication by member states, and also supporting the work of other stakeholders. As you know, the current CAADP Malabo is essentially penciled in to end in December 2025. So we're still within the CAADP Malabo phase. And the intent is for CAADP Kampala to really take over in January 2026. So many of the processes I've listed here, or the activity areas, are essentially a transitional sort of, they are transitional activities that are going to take us to the end of, the Malabo phase, into the beginning of the Kampala phase, where essentially now we are laying the groundwork for what needs to happen in the Kampala phase. So this is essentially a roadmap for a period of about a year in terms of, supporting finalizing the work on, the Malabo, but also transitioning into CAADP Kampala. So, a huge part of the work that we now need to do is really, to look at the leadership and governance and coordination at all levels. Essentially, we've started the review in terms of how that is organized and how we want to see it going forward. So I'll go into a bit more detail later in terms of some of the specific areas of work in that regard. We are also looking to align, policy and planning frameworks with the new CAADP Kampala, because as you heard from our previous speakers, there's quite a bit of work that will be required to align and to improve on policy instruments and some of the the planning sort of frameworks that we depend on essentially for CAADP Kampala to be embedded and to be integrated in national systems that are critical. Many of them have already been indicated by previous speakers in terms of, if you really want to see movement, there are critical national systems that need to align with this agenda for the kind of traction that we require. We also intend, in the next few months to work on strengthening technical capacity that is available at different levels to support the domestication of CAADP Kampala, this is an important element. You heard about some of the weaknesses that are part of, the systems that we are, working with. The intent is to really, mobilize and harness the technical capacity to help us to exactly deal with some of those weaknesses, to help our member states to really invest in, better policies, better planning systems, and better integration of those, elements into their own national systems. So for that to happen, we need better capacity technically to support those processes. Resource mobilization is a fourth area that we are also focusing on, essentially building the partnerships that are required to support implementation. You heard from many of the speakers that a lot of strategic investments will be required to open the space that the private sector requires to be able to, to function, to essentially create an environment, the ease of doing business for farmers, for agribusinesses to thrive. We believe there are strategic investments that are required, to be supported. And for us, those will be the focus of our direct work, to really support, to ensure that that happens at different levels. The final, package of work really as part of this transition is to strengthen our mutual accountability frameworks. You heard about colleagues speaking about the biannual review process, the systems around it, the mechanisms that are part of our tracking system to ensure that, we know where we are with respect to, the ambitious targets that have been set at continental level. So those are some of the, the elements that we'll be focusing on. I'll go into a bit more detail on each of these, but in the interest of time, I might not, cover fully the various activity areas. But yeah, as I mentioned, the first one that really focuses on strengthening leadership, governance, and coordination. The realization is that, for the food systems transformation that we all really push for it to happen, you really need high levels of commitment at the highest levels of political leaders, of senior, policy makers and decision makers to be on board with this agenda. It should not be an agenda for technicians alone. You need to, to ensure you have strategic arrangements for engaging your permanent secretaries, your parliamentarians, policymakers at different levels, and this needs to be intentional. They cannot be, anecdotal and accidental. They really need to be planned, and they need to be predictable for you to be effective in not only the implementation, but also holding everyone to account. You need all these instruments of government and civil society to come together and to come to the, to the party if they are going to really support the, this agenda. It needs to be a national agenda in each country for them, to really own this agenda. It should not be an AU process that's devoid or that's separated from national processes. So you need strengthened coordination. Colleagues earlier spoke about this now, being blown up into a food systems agenda rather than just an agriculture agenda, which is a much broader, ambition and a much broader mandate, which requires better coordination across ministries, across sectors, in ways that we probably have not done before. So we really need to work at what kind of units do we require for that coordination to happen at the kind of levels that would be required to manage such a, such a project. So also strengthening your joint sector reviews as national mechanisms for really tracking progress and looking at how you stick to commitments is also equally important. If you go to the next slide, just to highlight some of the areas in the second activity area, essentially that speaks to aligning policy and planning, frameworks. You know that after the CAADP Kampala declaration and its strategy and action plan, we now need to move into outlining a results framework. But again, the entire framework at continental level still remains, it's not prescriptive as such. It remains a guide essentially for countries to really look at what is relevant for their own context and for them to go into the minute details in terms of what they really, see as working in their area. But we want to provide the broad results framework in terms of how we see some of the suggested interventions leading to the ambitious commitments and targets that have been put in place. So we want to work on, support also our member states to work on their own systems, the national investment plans. We want to support the RECs also refine their, their investment plans to guide countries going forward. So there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done. If you go to the third area, essentially, I would really just skimp on this because I see the moderator is looking a bit nervous and because of time. So I will not go into the details. I spoke already about the technical networks that we want to build on to really strengthen the support that we give to countries, that we give to our RECs and other stakeholders to really, support execution of CAADP Kampala. The fourth one is essentially on the resource mobilization. I've gone into some detail already on that. And the final one is, the mutual accountability systems that we have already had experience working with, particularly the biannual review process. Essentially, we have worked with, over the past, 10 years, essentially, with good progress, good results that we have seen, but a lot of room to improve, a lot of room to look at how do we make it simpler and more, more systematic for our countries to essentially report on the data that is required to build a robust mechanism for monitoring progress. We see a lot of improvement that can be done in terms of streamlining those processes, integrating the reporting system so that when countries report, they're essentially reporting across numerous, reporting commitments that they have for continental, at the continental level, but also at other global, sort of commitments that they have. So we want to integrate those systems. We want to make it easier for countries to report. That said, I think I should say this is really just the basic coordinating function, sort of that we are looking at, and we haven't even started delving into the nitty-gritties of each of the strategic objective areas. How are we going to support, member states? How are we going to support our RECs? Which is really a lot of the work that you are already doing because of a focus on the thematic area, which aligns with, with strategic objective number 1 and number 2 as well. So we will really, bank on the groundwork you're already doing to really look at how we support you going forward and address many of the challenges that have been highlighted during this discussion. So let me stop there. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and apologies for going over time, but I look forward to discussions after the presentations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mutamba, for that. I know that the roadmap is quite voluminous, and therefore we understand you taking time over that. Now, before we go into the questions in the chats, and I would hand that to Ashford, my colleague, to do, and before I let go of the panelists, I think from my end, I would like to ask the question. So we were really discussing how to make agribusiness a critical lever for accelerating food systems transformation. And Madam Providence, if you had the power and the money, what is the one thing you would do to make this happen?
Thank you very much. The one thing I would do to make this happen is providing finance, especially investing in enabling infrastructure that support productivity and the market access.
So finance for infrastructure to enhance productivity and market access. Thank you very much for that. I'll ask the same question to you, Usman. If you had that, what would you do to make this happen?
Shola, I think if I have the money and the power to make things change, the most important thing I will do, I will create an enabling environment to all the actors to be able to deploy the entire capacity to implement. So the enabling environment will be my focus. Thank you.
Prof. Sibanda.
Yes, I think for me, it's not so much having money, but I guess it's having the power to get governments to focus on things that only they can do, which nobody else can do, in order to drive agribusiness. And we're talking about really investing in a smart way. The instruments are there. They just need to to utilize those instruments and not, use a hammer in all cases where you might need a different tool. So that's basically, I think that's the key thing, that governments need to take their rightful role in. It's really creating the right environment in a practical way, in a way that will get private sector to take a bite at doing what they need to do to provide goods and services. That's not the role of government. The private sector is supposed to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Manyo, I know you just spoke, but let me put you back on the mic. If you have that, what would you look at?
Thanks, Moderator. I think I'll align with a number of speakers already, in terms of, the really strategic investments that are required to to enable the ease of doing business. For me, I think that's where I would really focus on, and essentially also just look at the financing of agribusiness all the way, from the production side all the way to your SMEs that are taking things post-production. Going to the trade side. I think the financing of those value chains would really be, a focus that would attention, from where I stand. So that I'll align with other speakers in that regard. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. So I've written those 4 down, and I think that they will be able to see how we can put them in, because I think it's quite clear that I think the investment, particularly, I like the way Professor put it, and I mean, it's expected, since it's a professor, to look at it in terms of focusing the government on what they need to do. So thanks for that. So I'll hand this section over to Ashford to look at the questions in the chats, and I think he'll be able to direct them accordingly, or in terms of who can answer them. So over to you, Ashford, and thanks very much to the panelists, and thanks very much for the wealth of knowledge and the discussions that have been quite insightful. So over to you, Ashford, and let's see what is in the chats.
Yeah, thank you. There are several comments on the chat. I'll just read them through so that the presenters, our speakers, can respond to them. One is saying leadership change, lack of sustainable governance structure, and smooth political change has been an impediment. Has been a major impediment. I need to get this. Yeah, has been a major impediment and to the transformation in the food systems. Then the question is, I need to, there's also a few additions. How could this be addressed in the new Kampala CAADP process? That's one. And then the second one is we need to hear more on centrality in agro-processing as a key cog in the transformation of food systems. So what is there? What is in the agenda? And then the other one is, do you have successful agribusiness governance system cases in few selected countries on governments which we can use? Yeah, there's still, the chat is beaming. There's also, thanks to all key speakers for the excellent presentation. One more question: policies without a budget are just wish list. And you are right, yes. We have learned from Maputo process to ensure that the respective countries' national investment plan include a budget in the implementation of Kampala Declaration. Is it there? Yeah. Congratulations to the team from great webinar. Thank you. If the speakers can add to this, especially how they embedded into the CAADP, would be helpful. Thank you for the presentations. It will be more interesting to see the roadmap and the action-oriented influence the different member states in terms of how to plan and budget for investment. That accelerate agribusiness investment, especially infrastructure, share more status about AFCA, what are the terms and conditions, and where are we? I think we have several comments on the chat, but I would like, maybe in the interest of time, because we still have 10 minutes to closing, ask Chola if it's okay, that maybe the speakers, we can go through one by one and they respond to either the comments or the questions on the chat, and then we go to the next closing. And our question here is, what you had today, was it new? Does it resonate with your experience, and what's useful in this, and how do we upscale? How do we move forward? So Chola, I think we can respond to that. What we do also is we still have the contacts of the presenters. So in the interest of time, for the second round, please feel free to post the chats, but we'll ensure that it's responded to, and we send it to you by email. So you could also leave your email on the chat. Do we go speaker by speaker?
Yeah, I think that's fine, Ashford. You can just direct the questions to the speakers, and then they can pick them up.
Yeah, Providence, from those comments, is there something you address directed to you?
I was looking through the chat, trying to find if there's a specific one addressed to me, but this one, I can try to respond to one question about the question about policy without a budget that are just wish lists. It's very true. It's even if we put it in a very practical way in our own life, can you plan for what you don't have means for, or you are not looking for means to implement? So our policy should be costed. Our strategies should be costed so that we know what are the resources we are looking for, so that when we are mobilizing resources as a country or as a region or as a continent, we say we are mobilizing resources to address A, B, C, D, and based on our estimation, this will require this, so that the development partner or even the government, as the Minister of Agriculture go to present their budget, they are going with a case with really value. We have seen this work at COMESA when we go to present to member states a case with money. If I say, if you invest 5 million USD, you will unlock trade for $1 billion. Then that's when the money holder, the people in the Ministry of Finance will listen to us. But if you keep on saying we need the money to invest in agriculture, when we are not costing where that money is going and what will be the benefit, then we'll continue having these nice policy strategies that are not implementable. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Providence. Thank you for your great input. Osman, your last shot. Do I have Osman or Mr. Jibo? Manyeu, you could also maybe...
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. And coming back to the first comment which was made in the chat, leadership change, I think this is a very critical aspect. We can see frequently leadership change in many countries, but the governance system is not improving. I think this is a comment we need to consider. I think the governance system, as we were saying before, should help create an enabling environment to support sustainable development processes. And therefore, this aspect is very important in terms of making the paradigm shift we are looking for. And the other aspect, because the enabling environment alone is not enough. It should help the private sector to come in. And this is where the second comment on the centrality of agro-processing is very important. And the professor was saying earlier, the private sector should be the driver of the transformation of agri-food system we are looking for. And therefore, we need to make sure that they have the enabling environment with a good governance system. Just to respond to these two comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Osman. Much appreciated. Manyeu, your last comment.
Yes, thanks, Ashford, and also for the feedback from the participants. I think just to say there's still quite a bit of work in terms of really refining the roadmap, particularly at the country level, where I must be just upfront that most of the countries are only starting now to look at where they are and looking at where they want to be in terms of aligning with the CAADP Kampala. So working with countries to align their roadmaps and to align their planning frameworks is not yet started in most places. A few countries have already started, but there's still a lot to be done. So it's an area that we are, putting a lot of attention because I think that's where you need to get things right. A lot of what is in the CAADP Kampala document, as I said earlier, is really guidance. It's not a prescription for any particular country. So essentially, the idea is for each country to go back and really use this guidance, to look at how they want to refine their own, investment plans, how they want to also take, some of the lessons with respect to improving the integration of these plans in their national systems to the extent that they are recognized by their own national development plans, and they are embedded in their systems for funds allocation. Because as you heard, without those systems being in place and those mechanisms supporting this agenda, then it becomes maybe something that's on the sidelines and something that anyone, all the other stakeholders will struggle to engage with. And obviously, the central role of government in unlocking, opportunities in the private sector will also struggle to see the day. So I'll leave it there, but yes, just to say that we are really at the beginning of a lot of work to get to where we need to be to support the unlocking of the unleashing of the CAADP Kampala potential into transformation of food systems. Thanks. Back to you.
Thank you. Prof, your closing remarks and also response. There was a bit of questions on agro-processing and what we should know more about investments. Yes.
Okay, I think there was a question that wanted to hear if we had any success stories and examples. I posted something on the chat, which is a case of Nigeria, that is the Nigeria incentive-based risk-sharing system for agricultural lending. I think that will be an interesting case to look at. Focusing, I think Nigeria has done very well on the rice value chain and others, so that will be something good. You could also check on Morocco, which has also done quite a bit in terms of breaking down the agriculture investment sort of plan level to go down to commodity or subsector level. Now, the other point on the change of governments, I think this is understandable. If we don't understand the political dimension of this whole thing, then we have a problem. Every time you have an election, the parties that win basically put out a manifesto which they have to live up to. So they need to be seen to be faithful to the manifesto that the voters, basically the electorate, put them into power for. So that sensitivity needs to be accepted. But and we've seen examples of that in the past during Malabo particularly, and even before that, where countries would go and put up parallel planning. You would have a CAADP sort of compact on one side, and then you have a national agriculture plan, development plan on the other side, which probably did not quite talk to each other. So I think in terms of domestication, we have to accept that countries may have slightly different priorities. And what we want to see is that they use the CAADP document as a guideline to make sure that whatever they do, whichever party comes into power, these are things that are standard. Everybody wants to make sure that their food system meets its requirements for the citizens. And the issues of trade and everything, no government can actually argue against any of those things. Whatever they want to call the document, that's okay. But we must make sure that in domesticating, whoever comes into power makes sure that there's some things which are not negotiable. And those things are going to be incorporated into whatever plans that government may have and want to implement. That's all I would say for now. So our support is really to make sure that governments are familiar with this and they see these as generic issues that transcend, all parties, and everybody wants to be fed. We all want agribusiness to succeed, and I don't think there will be any government that will be against that. The issue is more on the strategies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Thank you, presenters. I would say I see there's still some more comments which we'll react to. There's one in French which is talking about the change in leadership with this problem with regard to terrorism over the several years, is how to reduce this investment risk. I would say, based on time, we've done a good job. We have come to the end of the webinar. As we said at the beginning, and also the moderator said, this is a series of webinars that we're going to have, and we're going to be sharing with you. It's more in terms of sharing information, exchange, and supporting the processes with the different entrepreneurs, and looking at the agribusiness space, and what can we contribute and improve on the space for improved livelihoods. So we'll have another series of webinars. Simon, maybe in 1 minute, you can say a list of other upcoming webinars, which would also be interesting for people to participate before I invite Lynn to officially close the meeting, the webinar for us. Simon, are you there?
I'm here, of course,
perfect.
and I was listening very curiously, so thanks for all the great inputs today. And yeah, I'll keep it short. As what you said, basically we will have more relevant webinars around the topic of agribusiness investment promotion coming later this year. One topic I would like to highlight, it also came through today's discussion, is access to finance. And then we really want to look more also into the topic of climate smart agribusiness, with a particular focus on opportunities presented to agribusiness professionals and businesses through carbon markets. So the whole topic of climate finance will also feature quite prominently in the upcoming talks that we will gladly share with you and announce in the coming weeks. And with that, yeah, I would then hand it over for the closing to Lynn. Thank you.
Lynn, the floor is yours.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you so much, Simon, for the small, I would say, teaser for the upcoming expert talks. Let me thank first of all our key speakers. So Ms. Provenance, Usam, thank you. Professor Simba, thank you very much. And Dr. Manyuvu, thank you for this insight presentation. It was really excellent. I have learned a lot today, and also having this kind of opportunity to share with you the thoughts, and that we can discuss also certain points. So then also my big thanks to Chola, hosting and organizing this expert talk together with us at GIZ ABF. And of course, Ashford, thank you for moderating also this expert talk. And I'm really looking forward to the next one, and wish all of you a very nice and successful rest of the day. See you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You may post further comments. We'll also share the documentation of this meeting, and you may leave at leisure. Moderator, it's
no, thanks very much. Thanks very much, and we look forward to the next one. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.